Zoom's AI terms of service. What is all the kerfuffle? I mean, I did a Google News search on it today, and it's like the gift that keeps on giving.
It really is. It's funny. I think you'd have to be like under a rock to not have heard something about this, but the reality is that most of people who have used Zoom are absolutely unaffected by this. Really, because the terms that people are talking about are the ones that affect AI. And the only AI that is being used, or the only generative AI that is being used on Zoom right now, is in trial, and that those trials are being used by customers who are only using it if they are opting into it in a very active way. It's not like, oh, yes, I want to do that. It's just like when you get on a Zoom call and you're being recorded and it says, yes, call is being recorded. And you have to accept, you have to hit yes, and you have to acknowledge that on both ends of the conversation. So I think what's happening here in reality is that they're sort of caught in this perfect storm of, there have been some privacy issues in the past with data. There are widespread privacy issues just in big tech in general. And then there's kind of this panic around AI, right? So there's all of this
Yes.
happening. So
Yes.
there's that perfect storm. But then also, maybe they could have done a better job of just communicating it really straightforward. What they did do is, as soon as it became an issue, they came out and communicated it. So I think they did a really good job of doing that. Maybe they got a little, actually, the reality is I think they got ahead of themselves in putting those terms in, which is what freaked people out because it didn't affect the majority of their
Right.
users. But so they got ahead of themselves in that, but then sort of got behind in the messaging because it was like not explaining that it actually doesn't affect the majority of the users. So that's basically what happened. And like many things, if you read the headlines, the news outlets are just trying to make so much of this that doesn't really exist, where it's like, they're just trying to scare people. It's clickbait, a lot of it.
Yeah. You and I spent a whole lot of time in this. In fact, you met with the senior leadership team
Yes.
out at Zoom Perspectives. It's kind of a precursor to Zoomtopia,
Yes.
and got to know folks pretty well. Last year, I went as well. Spent a lot of time with Eric Yuan. In fact, both you and I were on with the COO of the company to walk through this. So this is
And
not
chief product
some
officer.
exactly. This is not a knee-jerk response and kind of what we're looking at, but there is a lot of smoke here, and I do appreciate the company saying, "Hey, we probably could have done this a little better." But I
Mhm.
think in all this, you really have to, and this is some upfront, close and personal stuff that we get, is we get to meet these people, right? And by the way, the one thing that generative AI is not going to replace is human intuition.
Mhm.
And as I always talk about, hey, one of the methods we have to assess a company and its future products is the senior management team.
Yep.
And their senior management team has been nothing but open, but nothing but honest with me. And
Mhm.
that means a lot. In fact, Eric Yuan gave me his cell phone number, right? He's like, hey, you need anything, you see anything, just contact me. Obviously, I haven't abused it. I think I used it once in a year. But that's the kind of company that they are. Now, the ringer that they went through during in 2020 with security kind of kind of got people they wanted to relate to that, because Zoom did make some issues on the security front. Now, where are they today? They're the highest federal defense level you can get, right? With our Department of Defense, they've come a long way, and quite frankly, it was probably a communications issue on the type of encryption they had. They said they had one kind and they didn't, and they took and then it was Zoom bombing, which is, that's not a security issue. That's more like, hey, I set up a meeting to let everybody in. including people who would Zoom bomb it. So I understand how we got there, and I'm with you. And if you've ever had a dog before and it gets like a towel and it like takes it and runs away, that's kind of where we are with AI. There's a lot of companies getting rich off of it. And again, this is Pat Moorhead, not necessarily Melody Brew, but once big tech companies who are looked at as evil start to make money, it's, hey, we need to make sure that we find some dirt somewhere. Okay. And whether it's self-driving cars, whether it's social media, by the way, a lot of that criticism is warranted. And even in this case, in the security case, the company's like, hey, here's what I could have done better. We did it, but this is not like, oh, we're trying to pull a fast one on you. And I really appreciate what you said, which is it was such a small group of people,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, like you said, I was at Perspectives last week. I spent a lot of time with these people, and this was prior to this happening. And one thing that, it's, as analysts, we get this access to people and we get information under NDA. This was prior to any of this coming out. So I kind of, you sort of get the behind the curtain scene. And one of the things that I came away from Perspectives was it's like I almost wish that people knew what I know about the company, because you come away from them with like, they really are like, there's no PR people there. There's nothing wrong with PR people. I love me some PR people, but there's nobody controlling the narrative. We're just having honest conversations, right? So there really is.
And by the way, we're mature enough. I mean, we both have a lot of experience, and you need to be really good to put one over on us. Right. And it's not just, oh, we got snowed by senior management. You and I have both been in executive management. We've been there and we've done it. And we maybe have had to do this prior in our careers. Well, we can smell this stuff out. So I just wanted to add that. I mean, if you're a Gen Zer watching, it's like, oh, you just believe what they tell you? No.
Right.
We can cut through. We can see any weird stuff that's going on. And by the way, being face to face, it's really hard.
It's harder to pull something.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.